It sounds pretty good.
It sounds real, dude.
Not bad, huh?
This is today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Welcome back, folks. Welcome back to TNT Today's News Talk. I'm Patrick Henningsen, your host. We're live and direct for the next 2 hours. This is still hour number one, this live broadcast. Thank you guys for joining us, and a big hello to our community in the TNT chat room. We had 135 at our high water mark in the chat room yesterday. Good to see those numbers climbing. Love what you guys do in there. Keep up the great work, and that's where you want to be during the show. It's the red bubble, the red pill in the lower right-hand corner of your screen to go to tntradio.live. Just click on that. Stay logged in. It'll keep you in the session for future shows. So that's where you want to be during this broadcast. Now, we're going to pivot right now to the Middle East. And as I said during the opening segment, there was some coverage about Iranian missile strikes in the Western mainstream media, but they didn't talk about all of the strikes, and they didn't talk much about what really may have happened. We're going to delve into this and how this bears upon the situation right now in Palestine, and also with regards to the U.S. and their escalation against Yemen. Very pleased to welcome onto the program veteran journalist based in the Middle East from Beirut, Lebanon, Leila Hatoum, joining us on the live link right now. Hello, Leila. Thank you very much for coming on TNT this week.
Hello. Always nice to be on your show, by the way.
No, it's great to have you. Leila, this is absolutely, there's so many things that we need to unpack here, but I want to give you the floor just to outline what has happened and the significance of it. And then let's get into some of the burning questions about these Iranian missile strikes. I think this is a major event, and this is why it's being underplayed so much in the Western mainstream media, because quite frankly, they look like they're at pains to see how they're going to respond. Go ahead, Leila.
Well, over the past 48 hours, we've seen tension escalate not only in Yemen and elsewhere, but also between the two neighbors, Iran and Pakistan. And you have to remember, these two neighbors are the biggest superpowers in the region, given the fact that one of them possesses nuclear weapons, and that's basically Pakistan, and the other one is aspiring to have a nuclear bomb, and they're working for that, and that's Iran. So when you have one sovereign state attacking the sovereign territories of another state, that's a major no-no. Iran went over and attacked 3 sovereign states, targets in these 3 sovereign states. And they thought that Pakistan is going to be just like Iraq and Syria. You know that Syria had been facing civil war. It's divided over the past 12 years or so. Iraq is also divided by internal conflicts and the attempts to separate Kurdistan from the rest of the Iraqi territories. So these governments are kind of weaker than a unified government at one point or another in Pakistan, a country that respects its sovereignty. And Iran miscalculated the Pakistani reaction. So when they attacked, for example, Jaish al-Haq in separatist Balochistan area at one point or another, claiming that these people have tried to attack or attacked sovereign Iranian territories in the past, this did not sit well with the Pakistanis. One, because they are a sovereign state. 2, at the end of the day, they were not notified of it. And they told the Iranians, you told us, we would have been able to actually tackle this issue. Yet you acted from behind our backs and you attacked our sovereign territories. This will not sit well. People were literally sitting on the edge of their chairs, waiting for that front to open at any point. And if that front escalates, that means basically a larger front, not only in the MENA region, but the MENASA region going all the way to Central Asia. And this is what the US wants. You have to understand, the US has been trying to target Iran and move it to basically act and open more fronts. So basically, it can give them an excuse to go and attack Iran at one point or another. So that's why we saw the Americans and the British, who attacked the sovereignty of Yemen, supporting Pakistan in terms of defending its sovereignty against an attack by Iran. That's how it looked like, right? However, Pakistan poked everybody's eye by acting responsibly in terms of being a superpower with, at one point or another, a nuclear bomb. And I do consider the reaction as a self-restraint. They targeted Iranian sovereign territories, and they killed 9 separatists over there. Iran says they are foreigners. Apparently, they are Pakistani separatists from Balochistan. However, you have to understand, this attack is a retaliation to the Iranian attack, and I don't believe that there's going to be any further escalation. Pakistan has shown self-restraint. Iran had apologized because we got information that the Foreign Affairs Minister of Iran picked up the phone, called the Foreign Affairs Minister of Pakistan, apologized for what happened. They are going to coordinate going forward. If anything happens, they will basically tackle it together rather than acting unilaterally without a green light from either side of the border. So I do believe that whoever is capping on escalation on that front, the maximum that we saw is a retaliation from Pakistan in the same manner as the attack itself by Iran on sovereign Pakistani territories. And this is how I see it. There is no expansion of that front unless basically you see India, US, or other factors on the ground who support separatist agents in Balochistan or elsewhere, trying to poke between the two neighbors to create further tension going forward.
This is interesting, Leila, because I know traditionally Pakistan and Iran have good diplomatic relations. In fact, Pakistan takes care of consulate duties for Iran in countries like the United States. So they have a lot of coordination politically. But isn't it true that Pakistan, you have political factions and you have the military, which itself has its own sort of political weight to it, and may also make arrangements with the ISI, for instance, that because of the division in Pakistani politics, the right hand doesn't always know what the left hand is doing or doesn't get permission from the left hand. There's that going on. But what I think you said is really significant. Pakistan is a nuclear power, and they didn't respond irrationally. So this is quite extraordinary. So it shows you that Iran has, I think, moved up a level in the region in terms of a normative power. They're kind of exercising a Monroe Doctrine, as the United States or Israel would do in their backyards. And Iran's is saying, we're going to take care of business in our region. And this it's quite a strong statement from that point of view, Leila. What do you think about the geopolitics of it?
Well, you have to understand, and this is just my view, like my analysis. It's not like something that I'm building on an official statement or anything else. But the way that Iran acted, I mean, there was the Kerman attack inside Iran that killed innocent civilians. And at one point or another, ISIS adopted it. A lot of countries in this region, including Iran, do believe that Israel and the US stand behind ISIS. So instead of going and attacking Tel Aviv or attacking US basically interests in the region, we saw Iran attacking what they claimed was the Mossad base in Erbil in Kurdistan, Iraq. They attacked radical groups in Syria, and they attacked Jaish al-Haq in Pakistan. So that's an attack on the sovereignty of 3 different states. That's one thing. And by that, they're no different or no better than the US when it attacks the sovereignty of Syria, for example, at one point or other, claiming that they're targeting separatists or those people, terrorists, or those who are attacking the Americans. They are no different than the UK when the UK attacked Yemen. So, at the end of the day, they cannot go and basically lay the excuse that America is breaching international norms or whatever it is. It's because they are doing the same. Israel is doing the same as well. So there's no difference between them, in my eyes, in that particular incident, I have to say. However, I would have loved to see Iran coordinate with these countries, tell them beforehand what they're doing, and maybe they could have reached a solution where we wouldn't have seen this kind of tension, not only on the military level, but also on the diplomatic level, because we saw at one point or other the calling of ambassadors, basically angry talks, statements, and even people on the ground have lost kind of respect, newfound respect for Iran in Pakistan. I was in Pakistan last week. If you remember, we had an interview as well when I was there, and I was speaking to Pakistanis, and it's very interesting to hear them highly praise the role of Iran in supporting the resistance in Palestine, because Palestine means a lot to Pakistanis. And I spoke to my newfound Pakistani friends in Pakistan today following what happened, and most of them actually showed disgrunt. They were disgruntled by what Iran did. It's an attack on their sovereignty, so it's their pride. So Iran kind of lost that kind of support that it had garnered over the past 4 months in terms of it supporting Palestine by attacking Pakistani soil. The way I see it, the Monroe Doctrine, it only works with nations that have power on the ground, and at the same time, nobody can face them because they're big powers in the region or in the area that they are found. So at the end of the day, so long that there's nobody can confront it or won't confront it because they fear a further escalation, the situation will persist. We will have preemptive strikes. You will have basically attack on sovereignty and so forth.
So basically, I think the subtext here, Leila, is that The United States and Israel have already written the rule book of how they're going to conduct what they believe are their interests. And Iran is basically saying, well, we're going to use that rule book as well. And
Exactly.
there's going to be
everybody's using the same excuse
go ahead.
at the end of the day. No, I'm saying like everybody is using the same excuse at the end of the day. However, you have to understand like the situation, it's different between Pakistan and Iran as opposed to what Israel and the US are doing to other nations. I do believe that when it comes to the Balochistan region, remember, it was a region that has been a thorn in the side of Pakistan at one point or another in terms of the separate over there, not from now, not from 10 years, but from 2006, even before 2006. So this attack on Jaish al-Haq in Balochistan did not sit well in terms of the national sovereign pride, but at the end of the day, it happened against people who basically Pakistan is also considered kind of a problem in terms of separating from Pakistan. Same way goes for the Baluchi side of on the Iranian borders as well, inside Iranian territories. So at the end of the day, they managed to patch the hatchet, like to bury the hatchet, as we say, because of this kind of situation. When it comes to other nations, the Israelis and the Americans, they did not only write that, they actually invented new methods to implement the Monroe Doctrine and even add to it. So they don't even care about the rest of the world. Like they wouldn't attack a certain area that would not create that much problem. They would attack all of the areas that they think it's a problem for them, and that's different.
And you know, when you look at Pakistan, you know, they have the port of Gwadar, for instance. That's an important part of the Chinese Belt and Road network for the future. Lots of terrorist attacks hitting there, plus the pipelines traversing that region. Obviously, this is in the interest of the United States that wants to thwart the Chinese Belt and Road project. So we'd be naive to think that the CIA and British intelligence, Western intelligence, Israeli intelligence, are not involved in a lot of this terrorist activity to disrupt Pakistan's relationship with China, for instance, the Belt and Road future of Eurasia. That's definitely in the interests of the West. I think people understand that in the region. It's still a touchy subject because, like it or not, the United States is still the big boy on the block, and Pakistan has to deal with them, and they have to deal with India as well. So this is not an easy thing. So I think this is very, as you said, Leila, very sensitive issue. And but I think Iran seems to have made a calculation where they know they're going to sustain some diplomatic damage from this, but they've done it anyway. So that makes me wonder, Leila, the underlying motivation of Iran. They must have a bigger picture that they're looking at going forward. Otherwise, I can't see. They've been a very rational actor and very measured over the years with these sort of things. But they have demonstrated, Leila, this medium-range missile capability, and the distance from Iran to Idlib is the same distance as Iran to Tel Aviv. And I don't think Damascus was protesting too much about this strike. That's just me, Leila. I'm guessing that if they didn't get a formal permission, they weren't unhappy about it in Damascus. I think, do you agree?
As you said from the beginning, this is a very sensitive issue, and we would be fools not to basically believe at one point or another that the American interests would lead to interference, some sort of an interference, be it through rogue agents on the ground or supporting certain separatists from actually carrying those attacks, including via terrorist groups. And this is why I said, basically, you might see countries that have a vested interest in this region, like India, like the US, the UK as well, at one point or another, China, Iran, and others, basically carrying some sort of action over there. You have to understand as well that the main fight in that region is not between Pakistan and Iran as much as it's between China and the US. And they happen to be the main countries in the Belt and Road Initiative. Don't forget that also Iran recently in January 2024 joined the BRICS nations, and that Iran had found a new brokered peace with Saudi Arabia that's brokered by China itself. So the Chinese influence in the region, diplomatically and economically, has been increasing. So I wouldn't rule out a fingerprint, a US fingerprint in whatever is happening on the ground over there, be it the terrorist attacks or be it the incitement of separatists in Balochistan that led to this whole fighting. However, you have to understand one thing. When it comes to the Damascus and Iraq, I said it from the beginning, Pakistan is not Damascus or Iraq. Damascus is an ally of Iran. That's the first thing. And at one point or another, some people claim that there's a hegemony over what's happening, Iranian hegemony over what's happening in Syria. This is not true, but they do see eye to eye in terms of lots of things, including the Syrian-Israeli conflict and the Syrian government's conflict or fight against the terrorist groups on the ground. Iran had been supporting military-wise and diplomatic-wise everything that the Syrian government has been doing on the ground in terms of fighting ISIS and Al-Qaeda groups, basically Jund al-Sham and others on the ground. So if an attack happens by the Iranians against a terrorist group on the ground in Syria, the Syrians would feel more relaxed because they are getting rid of those terrorist groups and it's their ally bombing them. To what extent there was a coordination, we don't know, but that attack, it would sit better with the Syrians rather than basically the attack that the Iranians carried against the Pakistanis. Same thing goes for Iraq. The Iraqis were surprised by the attack, and we saw it by the level of their reaction to what happened. So they were not coordinated with, they were not informed of what was going to happen. And there's a child that died in that attack in Kurdistan that basically other nations are using now as a hammer on top of the head of the Iranians. Like, you killed a child, you killed a businessman, etc. It doesn't matter if you're trying to attack the Mossad, you jeopardized and killed civilians, including children over there. So that would be basically a black mark against the Iranians. And the Iraqis actually acted upon that. So it would take some time kind of to patch or mend the relations between Iraq and Iran on the diplomatic levels. However, there are so many other stitches hidden in this whole patch of land between Iran and Iraq at one point or another. You have to remember that Iran supplies energy for electricity basically supplies electricity to Iraq. Iraq owes money to Iran at one point or another. At the same time, they do have the Islamic resistance on the ground that's supported in Iraq, that's supported by Iran. So there are lots of factors that are happening that would push the Iraqi government just to basically, take it to the Arab League, take it to the United Nations, carry it on the diplomatic level, but they will not do any military action against Iran. Pakistan, on the other hand, does not have all these underlying problems. Yes, they do have political issues. Yes, they do have the elections coming forward. They do have the time delay that basically if you skip it, there's a problem with Imran Khan running and being elected at one point or another. People on the ground are fed up with the current corruption and political deviations that are happening in Pakistan. Yet the country as a whole is a unified country and a sovereign country that has a strong army that can retaliate to those attacks. And this is what we saw. But the retaliation was up to the responsibilities of a nuclear state. They did not open a front. They just replied by a similar action. That's not an escalation. So they just taught the Iranians a lesson. Don't mistake us for other nations. We can retaliate, and we can retaliate bigger than this. However, we're keeping it at this level for this time. Now, who's going to cap on this retaliation and try to incite separatist groups or terrorists to expand that front? The only people who would benefit from that are the Americans, the Indians, and the British.
And also, people have to remember Iran's first sort of test salvo of this type of policy was in, I believe, June of 2017, when they launched a medium-range missile to hit ISIS targets in Deir ez-Zor inside Syria. And at the time, that sent absolute shockwaves through Washington. They could not believe that Iran had done that, basically pole vaulted over Iraq with a medium-range missile and smashed an ISIS base there. So, I mean, that was a real demonstration. And then after the assassination of Qasem Soleimani and Abu Mahdi al-Mohandes, they then hit American bases in Iraq, and I believe a target in Erbil as well. No response from the United States from that. So, I mean, if you look at this pattern here, Iran's kind of saying to America, I think, we have capabilities. They're saying to Israel, we have capabilities. Just be on warning. This is what we can do. And they're hoping, I guess, that that's going to hopefully factor into the decision-making of the Israelis and the Americans. So this is what they call in America. They'll say Iran's playing hardball. That's the American expression there, geopolitical hardball. So this is, to me, Leila, a big change in the Middle East. These are very important events that we're witnessing right now, and they will alter the playing field going forward. We'll go to break in a second, but your final thoughts on this?
Well, I do believe that there's a game of tit for tat between the Americans and the Iranians in the region, especially in the Levant and Iraq as well. And the Iranians have always spoken about their arms in the past and they can reach anywhere, etc. However, as of 2017 and up, they started proving to the Americans that they can reach certain distances, and those distances are increasing in time. So by the time that we saw the 3 attacks over the past 48 hours, that's what actually pushed the Americans to try and focus more on what's happening in that region, because we saw a tactic repositioning of the ships in the Gulf of Aden and around the Arabian Sea. We've seen different communication between Americans and their allies, be it the UK or other NATO states that have their ships in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Red Sea at one point or another, their presence from the Eritrean Djibouti side and the Horn of Africa. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this is going to play, because the main curve, like the curveball that was dealt, it had shifted the attention not only from Eastern Mediterranean and Yemen, but all the way to Central Asia at the moment. However, I don't believe that's where the fight is going to happen. The fight is going to happen either in Yemen or basically Eastern Mediterranean.
So these are the areas that we want to keep a close eye on. Now we're going to talk about the actual, what they call the Southern Front if you're Lebanese, or the Northern Front if you're Israeli, South Lebanon right now, how that's shaping up also in relation to Gaza. The IDF seems to be making some concerted moves in that direction. I want to talk to Leila about this and more after the break. I'm Patrick Henningsen, your host. This is TNT, Today's News Talk. We'll be right back.
De-weaponizing weather with reality and perspective.
Well, we've got an interesting new study out. The real atmosphere does not follow the greenhouse gas effect hypothesis of the IPCC. Now, remember, what they're saying is a hypothesis. That means it is not proven. A theory, for instance, is something that is proven, and you get to disprove it, and then that causes a problem. It's no longer a theory. But a hypothesis is just an idea and needs constant testing. Well, CO2 increased from 310 parts per million to 385 parts per million during the 60 years from 1948 to 2008. Now, this is written by Kenneth Richard, so I want to give him credit because he put this out there. Probably takes guts to do that. But the observations indicate this led to a negative radiative imbalance, which means CO2 may be having a cooling effect opposite of what the IPCC has claimed is happening. Water vapor is the number one greenhouse gas. Water vapor has the correlation to temperature. If you increase water vapor, you will increase the temperature. You will increase it more where it's observed to increase more in the coldest, driest areas. That's the correlation. Where is the water vapor coming from? It would be coming from the oceans. So what do you think is heating the oceans? Now, I have my hypothesis, and a lot of people don't like it, but it certainly can't be CO2. This is TNT climate and weather watchdog meteorologist Joe Bastardi asking you to enjoy the weather. It's the only weather you got.
Patrick Henningsen and TNT.
All right, folks, welcome back. We're in the final segment of the first hour of this live broadcast here on Thursday, TNT, Today's News Talk. I'm joined on the line by veteran journalist based in the Middle East from Beirut, Lebanon, Leila Hatoum, joining us on the line right now. And we were talking about the incredible situation with Iran's missile strikes on these 3 targets in the region. What's the reaction going to be from the West? Will there be any, or is this just going to be folded into the geopolitical calculus in the grand chessboard? We'll find out soon enough. But let's go back to Israel and Palestine more directly. Leila, a lot of people will read events of the last 2 weeks that Israel is withdrawing its brigades, battalions from Gaza to reposition them, to put their resources in the north, to prepare for, it looks like anyway, a possible war against Hezbollah. What is your reading of the situation, and what are the important points that we need to know about?
Well, ever since the beginning of this war, I said that the Israelis are trying to create a larger escalation with Hezbollah, because that's the major front that if it opens, it will push the Americans to take part in the war and fight instead of the Israelis. The Israelis are now beat up. They're tired. They've been tired since the second week of the war. Remember, almost all of Israel's wars against Arabs and their Arab neighbors at any point did not exceed the 3 months mark, 2 months and a half max at best. And this war has basically it's almost finishing its 4th month. From the second week, Israelis were trying to look for a way out. They knew that they got into quicksand, as basically even their own defense minister, Yoav Gallant, told them. He was trying to get out of Gaza at one point or another, but he was faced by Benny Gantz, who was supported by the Americans, and Benny Gantz refused to basically stop that war. There was a fight in the cabinet between Benny Gantz, Netanyahu, and Yoav Gallant at one point or another, and the escalation, like literally the tension continues between these three men because each one sees himself as the next prime minister. The only ones who are being supported by the Americans are Benny Gantz and Gadi Eisenkot. Gadi Eisenkot supports Benny Gantz. So basically that tells you one thing: Benny Gantz might be the best option, not the best option, but like the only option that the Americans are supporting for the next prime minister in Israel. So that person is trying to push to expand the northern Palestine, South Lebanon front. Yoav Gallant had opposed that at one point or another. Hezbollah said, we're ready for that. The Israelis never changed their behavior towards Lebanon so far, like since 4 months until now. That was one of the main conditions that Hezbollah put to expand that front. They dared the Israelis. They said, if the situation in Gaza changes and basically the resistance in Gaza asks for our help, or if the Israelis change the way they act towards Lebanon, their behavior towards Lebanon, that's when basically we will take it further and basically that front might expand, right? Now the Israelis have ramped up their attacks against southern Lebanese villages. They've literally destroyed more homes. They continue until now. They're attacking Yarun, Hula, Kfar Killa, Ait al-Shab, all the villages along the blue line that are opposite of the Galilee Panhandle and its settlements. Hezbollah has maintained the same level of fighting on the ground that's limited to that area. So within 30 to 35 kilometers of the blue line, between the blue line and the Lebanese territories, that's where the Israelis are bombing. Hezbollah is bombing anywhere between basically 0 to 8 kilometers, 10 kilometers after the blue line from the northern front, the Palestinian northern front. You have to understand that some of those territories are also occupied Lebanese territories, especially the ones in the Galilee Panhandle. Hezbollah managed to hit we spoke about it earlier, if you remember, like in previous interviews. They hit Israel's eye in the sky, Mount Meron's air defense base. They've hit the Galilee North Command HQ at one point or another. They've hit literally almost every other military post that the Israelis have along the blue line. So the Israelis now are flying blind and they're also limping as well. The settlers have left those settlements. The only thing that's missing is a change in Israeli behavior towards Lebanon in terms of pushing Hezbollah to expand that front. So basically that the Americans will move in. Somebody tried to push in the media the narrative that the Israelis have pounded with 30 rockets the same town 72 hours ago, and that means basically that the Israelis are changing their behavior. No, they haven't. They're still hitting the same areas with the same velocity, some more than others, but it's the same areas. So there's no change over there. I do fear what's going to bring a change over there is basically the Israelis expanding the patch of territories that it's attacking, or at any point carrying another terrorist attack inside Lebanese territories. Remember, they have assassinated Saleh al-Arawi, the second man in command when it comes to Hamas in Beirut. But then again, it was an attack against a Hamas agent, not attack against a Lebanese citizen or basically a Lebanese target. So Hezbollah considers it like it's not a change of behavior towards Lebanon, and they retaliate by targeting the eye in the sky, which is basically Mount Meron air defense base. So far, the Americans tried to take the fight away and the pressure away from Eastern Mediterranean towards Yemen. They targeted Yemen along with the British helping them with that. But you have to understand, Hezbollah Secretary General has said one thing: the resistance across this region, be it in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, even Yemen, they're all unified. So if you attack one, the rest will continue to work and coordinate among each other. So it's not going to take off the pressure from the Israelis or the Israeli back when it comes to fighting to liberate Palestine and help the Palestinian resistance liberate their own territories.
And when we talk about the northern front, or Israel's northern front, and the axis is semi-southern front, where Syria is also part of that line if you extend out just a little bit further eastward past into the Golan Heights. So, and there's been some activity there recently as well. What do you make of those developments? Is that significant?
There was an activity today that is a significant activity today that we are still waiting for the news to filter through from our boots on the ground. There were two major explosions, large explosions that happened in the occupied Golan Heights in Syria, Syrian occupied Golan Heights, and we are yet to understand what caused these two explosions. There was no air raid over there, so something happened on the ground that caused these two massive explosions. You could see the pillars from a distance, according to my friend over there, and he actually posted some videos. I'm going to share them in a while on my Twitter account. You're welcome to actually share them also on TNT. We are waiting for that news, but at the same time, we saw some action in terms of retaliation using salvo of missiles from the Golan Heights, near the Golan Heights, all the way into the occupied Syrian territories and the northern front of occupied Palestine, which some basically has rebranded as Israel. I don't confess to Israel as a state. You have to understand I'm a Lebanese citizen and a humanist at the end of the day, and basically law graduate. Israel is not a state unless it has fixed borders that basically Israel lacks. It doesn't have fixed borders neither with Lebanon nor with Syria. So for us, it's an attack against occupied Palestinian territories. The Israelis did not retaliate much over there. They were retaliating against Damascus itself and the Damascus suburbs, against Iranian targets. That's it. I do believe that the Syrian front is the weakest in terms of the resistance. However, what we are trying to calculate over here as analysts is the possibility of having Palestinian factions, be it in Lebanon or Syria, that are now armed and they're ready to fight, them taking over the Palestinian front to fight from there against the Israeli occupation. It's not the Syrians who are going to fight on the ground. We have seen over 40 years of occupation to the Syrian Golan Heights, and we didn't see one single bullet being fired against the Israeli occupation over there. Syria opted to basically go under international law and file one complaint after the other in terms of the Golan Heights to the United Nations, but they didn't form a resistance on the ground to fight, and their army never fought over there. So what we believe is it's the weakest front at the moment. However, if the Palestinian factions are allowed to use that front to fight, to liberate their own land from there, then basically that's going to turn to another thorn in the side of Israel and in the side of the Americans as well. And it's going to be another miscalculation by the Israelis because they didn't see it coming at one point or another.
Now, is the Golan Heights, just to be clear, is that also that the fighting in that area, is that something that Hezbollah could expand into in terms of its activity, coordinating with their allies to help liberate that region? Is that something that's possible?
It's very possible. I mean, we've seen it in the past, Hezbollah using the territories nearing the occupied Syrian Golan Heights. Remember, you have the Druze towns that border the Golan Heights at one point or another, Sheba farms as well, being used in the past by like Nitra, for example. Nitra is a major area where Hezbollah also carried an attack after the Israelis attacked them over there. So Hezbollah, when they are attacked, let's say in Syria, they retaliate in Syria. If they are attacked basically in the Golan Heights by the Israelis, they retaliate in the Golan Heights. If they are attacked in Sheba farms, they retaliate in Sheba farms. So they retaliate wherever they are being attacked at. At any point, Hezbollah's fighters know the area very well. They know it like the back of their hand. They have been operating there for the longest time. So at any point, I do believe that they can give guidance to any faction that's going to fight from there. They might at any point be the ones supporting the Palestinians fighting from there, or they can carry their own operations from there against the Israeli front.
And the other big question is, and I don't know if you have any knowledge or information on this, but I know there's a lot of talk about the possibility that Hezbollah may have some anti-aircraft capability, which they haven't unveiled yet. As you and many other strategists will know, Leila, once you unveil such things, then it has to be used at the optimum time, because you may not be able to use it after it's been unveiled. What do you know about this, and what kind of a game changer would that be if there were anti-aircraft capabilities? Because this is Israel's major deterrent advantage, isn't it? Having overwhelming power of the skies. Go ahead.
Do you play poker?
I'm not
That's a
very good
question.
at it. Not very good.
But I mean, but you do know a little bit of the rules, right? So if you have a winning hand, do you reveal them from the beginning of the game, or do you look for taking everybody's money and then revealing that winning hand? And if you don't have a winning hand, do you actually reveal it to everyone and lose from the beginning, or do you try to bluff and then try to win without having to reveal your hand? And this is what Hezbollah is doing at the moment. In 2006, it's revealed that during the fighting, we saw that it had possessed new types of technical powers and basically military powers, some kind of missiles that they didn't have in the past. And they had the technology to actually hack into Israeli drones and see what the Israelis were seeing at one point or another. That was back in 2006. So imagine basically for 18 years down the line, what kind of weapons do they possess? And remember, Lebanon is not under blockade as much as basically Gaza was under blockade for the past 15 years. So all sorts of weapons can actually filter through to Lebanon via arms dealers, via the black market, and via other agents towards and make the way towards Hezbollah's depots. That's one thing. The other thing is that there were several articles in the US media that were literally pushed forward by the Israelis and the American intelligence departments at one point or another, speaking, that was 3 months ago, that Hezbollah actually possesses air defense systems and missiles. Hezbollah never replied to that. And there's a reason. If they reply and say yes, then basically the Israelis would be more careful in terms of their fights. And when they actually open that front finally and they start sending their F-35s and F-16s, they wouldn't be sending them to areas where they think they can be targeted, or they will keep at a certain distance or hide away from Lebanon. That's one thing. They do not know for sure if Hezbollah has that, but I can tell you one thing. If Hezbollah has it, that will be a game changer. Hezbollah has revealed so far 3 new tactical weapons that it has that we didn't know it had been in the past. The armed drones, the attack drones, the half-a-ton missiles, Burkan missiles, and at the same time, the winged missiles, the ones that you can't basically go and stop them at any point because they don't have a straight flight pattern, they have a zigzag pattern kind of. So those 3 weapons, Israel didn't know that Hezbollah had. And they fly at a range, 7, 8, 10 kilometers. That means beyond that, they can actually reach Rosh Dan, which has the majority of the facilities for it's the beating heart of Israel at one point or another, with all the infrastructure and the defense / finance / economic centers when it comes to Israel. So Hezbollah might have longer range missiles. It might have air defense systems. For me personally, I was watching what the Syrians were doing in the past, and I noticed that they have not until now used the S-400 air defense system that they got from the Russians. Not once, but they've always used the S-300, the older ones. So where did the new ones go? Are they with Hezbollah? Nobody knows. Are the Syrians hiding them so the Israelis wouldn't target them? We don't know. So let the Israelis guess. We might have S-400s. We might have a better defense system that we took from Ukraine. We might have even siphoned some of the arms from Israel. I mean, remember, the Israelis were literally catching every now and then an Israeli thief who goes to the front, steals arms from the Israeli military, and then sells it in the black market. They've caught so far 2 or 3 of them, right? So you never know if Hezbollah also took Israeli weapons.
So we don't know, but we shouldn't underestimate the poker playing capabilities of these actors. So Leila Hatoum, thank you very much for joining us on TNT Today's News Talk. Much appreciated.
Thank you for your time.
There she goes, ladies and gentlemen. Follow Leila Hatoum on X, Twitter. You can follow her at Leila1H. We've got her tagged on our feed at 21Wire on Twitter. It's a good source of information. She's also putting out great information on Spaces on X as well. Top of the hour news headlines are coming up. And when we come back, we're going to hit a whole lot more globally. So buckle up and stay right there.